In Lakota, there's a series of stories that's told throughout the winter nights. This is where people really have to be good in storytelling because you have to be able to keep your listeners' ear. And that means you really have to know your stuff, yeah? You really have to know your stories. And so after they eat and the sun is down and the family's in the teepee and the storyteller comes and he's talking about something that happened that day. And that reminds me of, well, one time Iktomi was walking down the road with his buddy Iya. See, Iya is like a monster, yeah? He's a giant. And Iya is always hungry. And he's never full. One time Iya tripped on a tree and he fell down. Iya said, "Oh, my toe, oh no." And he slow motion fell to the ground because he's a giant monster. So he fell slow motion and hanging onto his foot. Boom! And the ground shook and his head hit a rock and he knocked himself up. So Iya was laying on the ground. He had his mouth open. So this guy went over there and looked in there and here there was a whole Indian village living inside of Iya. See, they're getting the story now. It's going to be a funny one. Yeah, but it goes to show you there's some truth to this. That there were some dinosaurs that would eat a whole village. You see what I mean? So there's some truth to it, but then they turn it into something funny. And they're only supposed to tell those stories at a certain time of the year. That's tradition. That's to show respect to Iktomi. Iktomi also means spider in Lakota. He's a trickster. And you're not supposed to tell the stories during the summertime. And you're only supposed to tell them during wintertime. And this is where the entertainment happens, yeah, in the teepees. And they tell these really funny stories and the things that Iktomi has done. Like he married his mother-in-law or just really silly things like that. And they just make you laugh. And some of them are kind of scary stories though, but they're supposed to make you try to think what is the thinking underneath the story. And when you can understand that thinking, you understand what duality is, because Iktomi is actually teaching. Through all these funny stories, he's actually teaching you. So he always tries to trick anybody that he can. And so the stories, they come to a point where that animals, as soon as they see him walking, animals take off. So, oh man, here comes Iktomi. Shit, let's hide, yeah? So he comes walking through this rabbit town and he's like, he sings really off music, yeah? There's one where the melody part of it really is just funny sounding. And that's the nature of these stories. It's really interesting. The funny thing about this character is that almost every Indian tribe has the same stories. And even the Iktomi songs, they have the same melodies, but the different languages, because all the Indian tribes have different languages. So of course, Comanches are not going to use Lakota words, they're going to use their own words. But it's interesting that this is what unifies all these Indian tribes, is these Iktomi stories. I find that really interesting. I think that has to do with duality, that Indians all over knew what that was. They knew what duality was. Duality is when you see everything in only two groups and you say, I like this one, so that's good. And then everything else that's different, you say that's bad. And everything is focused on that. So you see everything in life as only having two components. That's why it's called duality. Duality comes from the word duo, and duo is Latin for two. And when you only have two, you have the tendency to assign one a good label and the other one a bad label, and that's where you get into trouble. That's when you start thinking that positive is good and negative is bad. And that's not true. This universe is founded upon 4 elements. And they're not about which one is the best one. It's not like that. These 4 elements, they just work differently. They don't fight against each other or anything. They just work differently. And this is how the universe is created. So you see, it's not just 2. It's more than 2. Lakota Star Knowledge says it's going to always be at least 3. At least. Most of the times it's 4. But at least 3. And many times it's more than 4. But it's never, 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 ever just 2. So duality is when you lose something. Lakota Star Knowledge says there's at least 3 components to reality. In duality, there's only 2. Well, that means you're missing something. That means when you're dualistic, when you're a racist, when you say your way is the only way, when you say your religion is the only religion, when you say your race is the best race, the chosen race, when you talk like that, you're dualistic. And since you only see 2 components to reality, that means you do not see the complete reality. And this is the problem of today. Duality. That's the main problem. And in duality, we don't take the time to check things out. We just judge it right away. We look at something or somebody and we say, oh, I don't like that. So that's evil. It must be destroyed. My favorite line from that movie called Steel Magnolias. You are evil. It must be destroyed. Shoot. Anyway, this is the problem that we have today. Duality creates everything that's problematic. For everything, actually. It's not just for humans, it's also the problem for plants and animals and that which moves and grows. Because all creation is connected. And so to teach duality, some people, it might scare them. So instead they'll put it in a funny form. And that's these stories. Anyway, this character, Iktomi, he wasn't always this way. He was once a really good guy. In the beginning, he was a really, really nice person. He used to be known as a different name. And he was known for his wisdom. His mother is the thunder being. And his father is the mountain. And in Lakota Star Knowledge, it describes thunder beings. The body is always moving. It's like a storm brewing. It's always in motion. So you really cannot see the outline of the Thunderbird. Iktomi used to go by a different name. And like I said, he was known for his wisdom in the beginning. But since his mother was a Thunderbird, or thunder being, part of his body was like his mother's body, meaning it always was moving. It was always in motion. So his face, for example, half of his face would be moving. Even while he's talking, it's moving. And it does it in a way that it's kind of funny. And one of his arms stretches all the time. It might get long, it might get short, and one of his legs is that way too. So when he walks, it's really comical. So people laugh when he comes in. Well, there was a time where he got tired of that. And so he decided to play a trick on a whole bunch of people, and here it backfired. There is an organization called Wakantanka. It's not God, okay? This is something the Christians changed. during the beginning of the reservation, they changed a lot of Lakota concepts. And they changed certain Lakota concepts to fit into a Christian way of thinking. And so they changed that Wakantanka to mean God. And really it's not. Wakantanka is not one person. It's a bunch of people. It's an organization. And they're also responsible for creating a lot of things on this planet. So, they do have a leader though. But this is not God, okay? Again, it's not God. It's the leader. And the leader came and spoke to this guy that tried to play this trick on a bunch of people and it backfired. And he said, "Why did you do that?" And this guy said, "Well, I'm tired of people laughing at me all the time." And then the leader of the Wakantanka said to this guy, "Well, you really shouldn't be concerned about what other people think of you. But what you did was so serious. And so the thing is, you're going to stay like that now." And as this leader was talking, this guy was trying to escape. There was no place for him to go, so he was trying to dig himself into the ground. And so the leader of the Wakantanka said, "That's what you're going to be from now on. Now you're Iktomi," he said. So that's how Iktomi began. He was not created as Iktomi. Like I said, he was a really wise person. He was known for his wisdom. The Wakantanka would come to him for advice. That's how wise he was. But one day he fell. And he tried to hurt a lot of people by tricking them. It all backfired. So that's why he has that reputation now as being the trickster. So that's how Iktomi begins. Now, I really made a shortcut version of that. This story is actually longer than that. There's a lot of things involved in that story. It's actually a really beautiful story. It comes from a story called When the Moon Cried. And that story talks about how women receive their cycle and how men also receive the cycle too. And it says that men and women are not better than each other, but they're not the same either, but they complement each other. So this is why ancient Lakota society was neither matriarchal or patriarchal. It was something completely different. So there's a lot of things that come from that story, but I'm just going to focus on this Iktomi part. So, like I said, a lot of these stories he's going around and the ideas that he comes up with are just silly, but it makes you wonder. And the results of them, the consequences and stuff like that, this really leads to comical things. There's always going to be different versions of these stories because every Lakota tribe and Dakota and Nakota, sometimes they might have a little bit differences in the stories because, for example, the Dakota people were fishermen and they were also farmers. They were agricultural. And the Nakota were somewhat of a warrior society, but mostly they were agricultural too. So for that reason, there's going to be some little bit differences, but the overall stories are going to be the same. The message is still the same. With the Iktomi stories, Iktomi's representation of emotional unhealthiness. And in Lakota belief, you cannot develop spiritually until you're emotionally healthy. You cannot develop spiritually until you are emotionally healthy. There's a lot of people today are living in a dualistic way, and that means they're emotionally unhealthy. But they go to ceremonies and they try to become really spiritual, but their relationships often fail because they're emotionally unhealthy. Especially if there's a lot of them, where they're just one partner after the other kind of people. And yet they go to ceremonies all the time. And it's really not doing anything. It's like they're in an airplane that goes up into the clouds and gets into this certain current, and they really think they're going a long distance. Then when they come out of the cloud, they realize they're still in the same place. What do you call that? See, I have some friends who are pilots, and I learned this from them, that there's a certain kind of a wind current that you have to be aware of that when you're flying. And so you go up into the clouds and you don't see where you're going, and you really think you're traveling far, but you come out of the cloud and it turns out you didn't even go anywhere. You basically just stood still. Because you're in that current, you were flying against the current, and so you really weren't going anywhere. But when you fly with the current, you can really travel far places in a very short amount of time. So these are some things that I learned from some pilot friends. But that's how it is when you're emotionally unhealthy. If you go to lots of ceremonies, or you go to church all the time, or whatever your belief system is, you're not really developing spiritually as long as you're emotionally unhealthy. And when you believe in good versus evil, guess what? You're emotionally unhealthy. Because when you're emotionally healthy, you realize that good versus evil doesn't exist. That's an illusion that was created by man to control things that he doesn't understand. And to control women, because he was afraid of the power of a woman's passion. So they create these things like good versus evil to control the women. That's really deep emotional unhealthiness. So that's Iktomi. He's a representation of emotional unhealthiness. He's dualistic. Here's a small story. When the animals are on the earth, and he goes to one group of animals and he says, "Hey, those animals over there, they said you guys are really dumb and you're really ugly." And so they say, "What?" So they start getting mad at the other animals. See, they don't know who Iktomi is. See, Iktomi just now became Iktomi. So they don't realize that he's tricking them. They think he's telling the truth. They think he's a nice guy, because he comes to them all friendly and smiling. So this first group of animals gets mad at that other group. Then Iktomi goes to the other group and he says, "Hey, did you see those animals over there? They said that your guys are really dumb and you're ugly." So then that group gets mad. Then Iktomi goes to a third group, then a fourth group, till he hits all the animals, telling each group that another group thinks they're ugly and dumb. Next thing you know, all these animals start warring with each other. And that's how we got the food cycle. It's just crazy, huh? So, see, this is the kind of character he is. That he really is like a used car salesman or an insurance salesman. He tells you, "Geez, you're a cool guy, you're smart, and you're just wonderful, and you make good decisions, and I got this deal for you that's going to help you for the rest of your life." That's Iktomi. He can really present himself as a nice, friendly man who is on your side. He's setting you up. He's buttering you up, so to speak. That when you least expect it, he pulls the rug out from your feet and tricks you. Puts you in a trap. That's how he is. So, when people are dualistic, this is how they are. They're like Iktomi. They do this kind of thing to make trouble, or to steal something from somebody. They use deception. This is Iktomi. And he can come in disguise and really just be like full of confidence, and he's going to tell you, yeah, you're doing everything right. Everything you're doing right now in your life is correct. He really is building you up because he's going to knock you down. He's going to pretend to be your best friend. And then when you least expect it, then he's going to stab you in the back kind of situation. That's how he is. So lots of these stories are like that. They have plots that are like that. And sometimes, like I said, the results are vicious. They're not always funny stories. A lot of them are funny, but sometimes they're not. But they're supposed to teach you something. And when you understand duality, then you see a deeper meaning in the story. Then you learn how duality works. And that's when you're really becoming enlightened. Now, enlightened doesn't mean you're better. Enlightened means you become a servant to the people. See, in the dualistic world, when people define enlightened, they think that, oh, he's a master. See, those are all dualistic terms. Those are putting people above others. This is violating humility. That's a natural law, humility. So, in the real world, enlightenment means you become a servant to others. It's important to remember. So when you see the deeper level or the deeper meaning in these Iktomi stories, then you really understand lots of things.
Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this video. I really appreciate it. And if you would like to send a special thanks in support of this channel, look at the bottom of this video where the title is, and right under that, where it says like, dislike, and share, right in that area, slide it towards the left, and you will see the symbols change, and then you will see a heart-shaped button that says thanks on it. If you would like to click on there to send your thanks of support, I would really appreciate it, as I really do enjoy making these videos and speaking with you and spending some time with you. So again, thank you very much for listening. To learn more about Lakota spirituality, I have written a book called Wichocha Otechike. This book also includes Lakota star knowledge information. All the videos that I make, which are about Lakota spirituality, Lakota star knowledge, and cultural information, are based on this book. This book costs 99 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost as well as a tracking number. And to learn more about Lakota language, I have written a Lakota language book called Chante Etanha Owoglake, Speaking from the Heart. And all my Lakota language videos are based on this book. This book costs 119 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost as well as a tracking number. I also teach online, and I give spiritual consultations as well. If you are interested in any of my services and products, you can send payment via PayPal to my email address, which is hehaka7@yahoo.com. That's HEHAKA, the number 7 @yahoo.com. When you send your payment, please include your shipping address and your email address. Ho, lila pilamayelo. Thank you very much. In the Lakota way, everything is circular. As a result, we do not have a word for goodbye in the Lakota language. And so instead we say until next time, which in Lakota is Doksha Ake. And I will catch you in the next video.